I never show you negativity. I'm always positive when you're with me. I never show you negativity. I'm always positive when you beside me. When you make promises, I never give you pain. All the things I did totally gone in vain. When you beside me, you always acting strange. Tell me, darling, it what made you change? What made you change, honey? What made you change? Please, my honey, stop acting strange. You never miss the water till the well runs dry. This love, my darling, it's you made it die. What made you change, honey? What made you change? What made you change, honey? What made you change? What baby? What made you change? Love you so bad. You don't treat me no as a friend. The way how you acting like this is a new trend. You don't treat me no as a friend. The way how you acting like this is a new trend. You was never like this before. It's no start happening. So please, my darling, give me a reason why you start behaving in this way. You change your mood each and every day. What did you change, darling? What did you change? Please, my honey, stop acting strange. You never miss the water till the well runs dry. This love, my darling, is you made it die. What made you change, honey? What made you change? What made you change, honey? What made you change? Oh gosh, tell them how can I take it? I wanted to show you the part of success. And up to you to make that progress. I wanted to show you the path of success, and it's up to you to make that progress. I need to lead you from doing wrong from right. Always remember, sit and don't bite. I think you should act and think again. So both of us will never feel pain. What made you change, darling? What made you change? Please, my honey, stop acting strange. You never miss the water till the well runs dry. If love, my darling, is you made it right. What made you change, honey? What made you change? Please, my darling, what made you change? Some people change because they are forced to change. Some people change because they are inspired to change. Some people change because they are frustrated. Regardless of the reasons why you have changed over the years, do know that change is conflict.
That's right. That's right. Good afternoon and welcome to the Ken Rampersaud Show on Island Zone Radio. This afternoon, today is the 18th of February 2022. It's not too bad. It's a little cold today, though. How are you guys doing around the world? Guyana, Trinidad, Suriname, wherever you're watching from, I want to say welcome to this show today. And I choose this show today because over the past couple of weeks, I've been talking about a little couple of things that, why people passed away in Guyana. What are some of the top diagnoses that people are suffering from? And today I choose my first mental illness diagnosis, which is depression. And as we all know, that depression is, it could be really bad. We want to tell you that it's also treatable. And so today I decided to bring the Mr. Narine Dat Sookram all the way from Canada, and he will be talking to us about depression. So we were supposed to talk about this 2 weeks ago, but as I get one of the experts to come on today, I thought that was the best thing to do. So how are you guys doing? And you can always say which part of the world are you watching from, um, and how are you going? How are you doing? So much negativity that's going on in the world when I look at Facebook and TikTok and so on. So I want to encourage people to just go ahead and make a difference. Say something that's positive on your Facebook page. Don't contribute towards the negativity. Um, you know, I see my sister Anita Dowlat Ram is watching from Canada. Hafiza Khan, good afternoon. How are you? She's watching from Richmond Hill, and I thought of you, Hafiza, today. Mr. Ajit Nabi Baksh is watching from Canada too. A very good afternoon to you, and hope all is well with you all. Um, like I said, I'm waiting on my guests to come on the screen so that we can get together and that we can talk a little bit about depression. Also, we want to talk about depression and men because too often times men do not, as I repeat again, men do not seek treatment for anything like depression, right? So we're going to talk about all of that today, and see how best we can, what best answer that we can come up with. All right. Um, Again, you're watching the Ken Rampersaud Show today on Island Zone Radio, and um, it's a beautiful day out there today. Trying to get Mr. Narine Dat to come on. I don't know what happened to my screen just now, but I'm gonna try to bring that back on. In the meantime, I can just play a nice song for all of you guys to listen to. All right. So again, also, we know that the Chutney Monarch, the competition is going on in Guyana. So that's another thing that we got to watch. And I want to know who is your top performance, who you think can really win this thing. And the truth of the matter is, I am hoping that W Lyrical could win this thing because the truth of the matter is that his song was number one, I think, for last year. And his song is, as you know, Jare, right? A lot of you like the Jare tune. So, of course, I like it too. And while Mr. Narain Dat is preparing to come on on the radio here today, um, let me go ahead and start. And I want to tell you that depression is a common mental disorder. Globally, an estimated 5% of adults suffer from depression. More women are affected by depression than men. And I want to know really why. So we're going to ask Dr. Narain that why this is happening. Also, there is effective treatment. I want to tell people that there is treatment for depression. You have mild, moderate, and severe depression, and you don't want your depression to move on from mild to and jump straight into severe depression. Like I said, there is treatment out there, and you can get it. All you have to do is to go seek the treatment. Research shows that mental illness are common in the United States as well as Guyana and around the world of people each year. It's suggested that one of the things that I've always tell people, and people knows this for truth, is that half of the people with mental illness, things like depression, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, like half of the people are getting treatment, and the other half of people are not seeking any kind of treatment. So um, I want to encourage people to go and get treatment if you are feeling depressed, and we will tell you how long it takes to really recognize that you have depression when you've been diagnosed. So, like I said, it's treatable, and if you take your medication as the doctor order, then you can get treatment, you can get well, and you can go on to live a great life, fruitful and productive life. All right. Um, Let me play another song in the meantime. And let me know how you guys are doing, which part of the world you are from. I know most people watching from Guyana. and let me know how things going in Ghana. All right. Um, so let's go with one of my favorite songs. All right, we got Narine that just tuned in.
अरे छोरो 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 कागज छोरो कलम मेरी लहू से लिख लो सनम छोरो कागज छोरो कलम मेरी लहू से लिख लो सनम हाँ हमको तुमसे प्यार है 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 ओए 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 हीरो कागज हीरो कलम अब छोड़ो कागज छोड़ो कलम ओ बेबी will you be my forever I live like what life without you if you not here my next to you अगर हम तुमसे दूर जाए हर रात चाहे पर लौट न पाए तो क्या भूल जाओगी याद टकराओगी ऐसी बातें क्यों करते हो मुझे भरा कर क्यों हंसती हो प्यार लावा तुम तो पागल हो गई हो मैं तो यूं ही झूठी बातें बोल बैठा अरे छोड़ो 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 कागज छोड़ो कलम छोड़ो कागज छोड़ो कलम Here we go. Penetration, and your boys want this. मेरी सांसें मेरा जीवन तेरा दिल है मेरी धड़कन साथ साथ हम चले साथ साथ हम रुके मांगते मैं भर दूंगा और तुझे सुहागन मैं कर दूंगा नाम अपना तुझ पे लेके प्यार अपना तुझसे लेके इस ज़मीं पे आसमां ये है मेरा 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 उससे जहाँ तक ओए झूठी झूठी हीरो कागज हीरो कलम दिल पे मेरे लिख दो सनम हीरो कागज हीरो कलम दिल पे मेरे लिख दो सनम कि तुमको हमसे प्यार है तुमको हमसे प्यार है कि तुमको हमसे प्यार है छोरो 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 कागज छोरो कलम मेरी लबों से लिख लो सनम Oh baby will you be mine forever I need you right by my side What is life without you right next to me
Well, welcome back to the Ken Rampersaud Show here on Island Zone Radio. And you see the guy on the screen there. That's no other than the great son. I don't need nothing to write on. I could tell you from my heart that he's a great son out of Guyana, Mr. Narine Dat. So proud of him and all of his accomplishment. He is a registered social worker. I should say he's a doctor now. So congratulations to him. He's also a psychotherapist, a job developer, a world record holder. And guess what? I thought in my mind I have a lot of awards in birds, but he has over 200 awards in Canada. So Narayan, every time I talk to you, there is 3, 4 award that's added to your collection. So congratulations. How are you doing today, brother?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Well, I am doing good. It's kind of cold here in New York. What's the weather is like in Canada?
It's not too bad considering the fact that it is February, right? So,
Right, right.
honestly, we've had it really good considering the fact that we are, in the heart of winter. Um, but we do have the long weekend here. We have a day that we call a family day, which is Monday. So this is our family day long weekend kind of thing. So a lot of people have kind of trying to reflect back, about the importance of family and being together and all those bits and pieces, right?
Man, but I have to tell you, since you talk about family, and I'm glad we're talking about this, I think I don't know if it's North America, but the family dynamic is kind of deteriorating when I'm looking at how things are going. And sometimes I wonder if we should have stayed in Guyana, where we have that family dynamics still intact. I want to say, what's your take on that?
Oh, good. Is that it's a good thing you brought up here. Obviously, the culture here is very very different. I think ideally, right? Ideally, when people come to places like North America and so forth, they come with that mentality and they come with that drive that they want to be rich and famous and accomplish a lot and so forth and all of those kinds of thing, right? And not realizing, right, that at the end of the day, things like family values and so forth is extremely important. And I think as people get more mature in life, as they expose themselves more to the real world, they realize that these things really you cannot put a price on it, right? um, what you said is correct, not denying what you're saying there, and that's one of the reasons I try to have that balance. It is important. That's one of the reasons why we do things like like the Caribbean Dreams concert, to somehow bring people together, right? Because people are always on the go, right? Always there's always people keep moving and and so forth, but it's nice to kind of pause. And I think that's one of the reason the government of Canada, at least here in Ontario, kind of recognize that as well too. Recognize that what people are always on the go and so forth, and so this is a time to kind of reflect. But I hear you. We live in a digital world, and that wouldn't change, right? Because we are always kind of trying to compete, whether that be compete with ourselves, which is not necessarily a bad thing too. But that's the nature of what North America is all about.
Right, right. Well, that's a good way to put it over. Today, Narayan, I'm looking into the pattern and some of the diagnosis that's affecting our Guyanese in Guyana. And so every month, every week, I want to talk about some medical issues that's affecting Guyanese or why they're dying, the top 10 diagnoses at least. And then I decided that I want to talk a little bit about the first thing is depression, as we know that it's a common mental health disorder and that does affect a lot of people globally and especially Ghana too. As you know, that Ghana is one of the country which has a lot of people taking their own lives. So that's why I decided that we talk about depression. And I'm so glad that I want to say thank you very much for coming on the show today to talk about this, as we know that you have a wealth of experience when it comes to things like this and so on. While I was reading, I see they said more women are affected by depression than men. And that's one of the things that we want to talk about later on, too. Also, a lot of men don't seek treatment. And I want you to keep these things
Yeah.
in your brain so that we can cut this up. Also, you and I know that, when we're in the subway or we walking around, we see a lot of people walking around. And sometimes we say to ourselves, these people look like, I mean, how do I put it nicely? They have mental issues. And so we want to know now, how come they walk in the streets? But I want to tell people that studies have done, and you will divulge into this and know that a lot of people, like half, not diagnosed with mental health issues, like depression and schizophrenia and whatever it is. So my first question to you, and we could talk together, um, what's in your, and I want to put this in
Yeah.
perspective.
Hmm.
A lot of times we feel sad in our life. Things happen all the time. Like sometimes I wanted Jesus. My car light, my car door is not working. My car window crack the other day right in front of my house. Somebody felt a brick on my front window. It cracked. And there's so many life experiences we go through, and we all sometimes get or feel kind of depressed. And in your terms, your professional term, what is depression really, and how we really come to a diagnosis of depression?
So, I mean, when we talk about depression, it basically comes down to little things that build up, that to kind of begin with. But
Right.
generally speaking, right? Generally speaking, depression, comes from a variety of different things. So that could include things like separation. I'm talking about, relationship. It could be finance. Finance is a really big thing. It could be separated from family for a long period of time. So, for example, I was doing a session with a male, and this gentleman, believe it or not, he was crying. I couldn't get a word in there because he was crying for 50 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Right, 50 minutes. I and
That's a long time.
Yes, and for all the years of me meeting with people and all of that, this one was very interesting, and unique. And when I tried to dig, and obviously I have to only give general information here. And so the issue with this individual is that he migrated from a different country to North America here, and so he separated from his family. Right, so he has not seen his family for 10 years,
Oh,
and this
wow.
is and this is just one example that he shared. He decided to come to therapy because it got to that depression stage. The second thing is that he does not have his papers, so he's not
Wow.
able to even move around and so forth. Another issue is that the money he makes, right, doing his day job is not enough for him to pay his bills and
Oh,
kind of live and survive. And so, and,
yes,
and
yes.
then he got turned down for his application in terms of trying to get his papers and so forth. So lots happening. So those are reasons why people kind of get into that depression mode. Is also could be things like death in a family and so forth. Not everybody is able to handle death, and
Divorce, yeah.
even though we know that that is something that will come. We just have to embrace this and so forth. People are not generally prepared for things of that sort, right? If people are not able to function in their daily lives, right, then it means that they're really gone into that depression mode. And some of the signs, I'm sure, that will come up more as we continue on with the conversation here. But if people are not able to get out of bed, let's say they don't have the motivation to get out of bed, that's a sign of depression going on there. Obviously, we will have our bad days, like as you mentioned. If I miss my keys and I can't find my my car keys, I panic for a few minutes and things of that
Right,
sort.
right,
Are
right.
very, very normal, because if we don't have those experiences, we are not human beings, right? But when it comes to the depression piece, it's very, very different. And I mean, now I am more knowledgeable than I was, years ago. Um, and I'm referring to my brother basically died by suicide. And we tried to use different term, but basically he took his own life. We never understand it because he had everything, he had good jobs and everything. But I think over years, if I try to scramble pieces and put together, it has to have some sort of relationship to some sort of mental health illness,
Oh
really.
wow.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes. Um,
yeah.
and let's go back to depression. I want to
Mm.
the answer what I was looking for. And how long does one has to be depressed in order for them to be clinically diagnosed?
Yeah. Yeah, so ideally for me, I mean, I always believe in this preventative piece. And speaking of that, this morning I had an emergency situation where clients reach out, they need that instant help, so to speak, and the person is hospitalized and so forth. So ideally, um, people like let's say everything is going perfect with people, everything is going perfect, job is job life is okay, marriage life is okay, relationship with kids is okay, relationship in society is okay, finance is okay, everything is okay. But let's say it comes to a point where um something happens, right, and you're not able to kind of function, right? Function meaning that you're not able to get out of bed and really participate in in society and try, and let's say there's a sign of withdrawal, right? um
Right.
it is very important to, and I mean, a lot of the times, in most cases, people wait for a long time, and then it gets so bad, and it's harder to get out of it, right? So there's no, for each person will be different. For some people, they can manage it. Like me, for example, I am extremely strong to manage stressful times. So even though things might be painful for me, and even though things might not go as well, I still have that kind of strength within me that I will push myself. But that's me, right? My father is that way, by the way, and so we still carry on with our daily lives and so forth. Not a lot of people can do that, so they are going to kind of withdraw, and that's one of the reasons why we have to keep an eye on those things. So to answer your question, there's not like a specific time frame where you can say, oh my goodness, that 3 months has passed by. For every person will be different, because keep in mind that everybody deal with things differently. Some people can lose their job, and they will, and I see it all the time because I hear these things all the time. People get stressed out, their blood pressure will kind of go up, they feel as if the world is coming to an end. A person like me now, I see it as an opportunity, right? And so it's how we handle those challenges that comes our way, right? Yeah.
Right. Right. And one of the things that why I ask you that is because I've been, I did a lot of reading on
Hmm.
depression, and one of the things that I saw is that they're saying that if you don't feel good, like in 2 weeks, um, and you said it right, and I'm so glad we're having this discussion because we're all individual, right? And they're saying that if for 2 weeks you are feeling down, and the signs and symptoms where you're talking about, like 2 weeks, then you can be diagnosed as depression, right? So, do you think that ruler that we are using there for that 2 week period is that the right thing,
Well, I
or it
mean,
all depends on people?
so if we have a situation as such, which is not uncommon, I mean, I mean, depression is a real thing, and everybody gets stressed out, and everybody may have been in that mode at some point or from, whether or not if they realize, recognize, or want to accept it, right? So ideally, it is extremely important for people to be connected with the family doctor, for example, right? And so having a conversation with a professional and so forth, especially if it's been a few weeks. Not necessarily 2 weeks, but if it's been a few
Right,
weeks, you can always
right,
have a conversation. Say, look, I'm not feeling myself anymore. I don't see any meaning in life anymore. Life sucks, people sucks, all of that. And we are, and there are a lot of clues usually on Facebook, by the way, when people are expressing themselves, right? There's something going on, and that's one of the reasons people express themselves in a certain way. When you have a conversation as such with a professional person, this family doctor wouldn't do anything per se, but he will make a referral, and a black family doctor will say, "Look, based on what you're sharing, I will, recommend you see a psychiatrist to have like an official diagnosis, things of that sort." When they do all of that, and that, based on what's happening, and generally speaking, in most cases, if not all, they will always recommend seeing a professional counselor, because you cannot lose anything seeing a counselor, which is difficult to do, especially like, I mean, our culture, like people from the West Indies and so forth. I mean, I only have a handful of people, like, because people, it is a new thing. People still try, the stigma is still there, and so forth. So even though people are may going through all of that, people wouldn't necessarily share it, right? So people wouldn't necessarily share it with their own spouse. They wouldn't share it with their own children because people want to be strong for the people who are around or are in their circle, and that's a problem too, right? And study shows that especially men, nobody wants to present themselves to be weak because they see it that way, not realizing that you know what, when you are strong enough to really take that step and say, look, something is not right, that I'm going to seek some help here because I cannot handle what's happening here. That's one of the greatest strength in an individual, actually.
I'm glad you say that. The other thing is that, as you're talking, I'm listening and I'm trying to get some nice questions so that our viewers could understand. Listen, do you consider, like, if you have a problem, do you think going to speak to a counselor without being diagnosed, is it a good thing? Is it a
Absolutely.
good
Oh,
thing to
oh yes,
pour
oh
out
yes,
your,
100%, absolutely. So
yeah,
most of my clients, they're
right,
not necessarily diagnosed um, with a particular disorder, whether that be depression, anxiety, or otherwise. Because
right,
at the end of the day, people know themselves more than anybody else, right? And so if they know that, look, I'm feeling that emptiness inside. I'm not seeing value in anything. Like life doesn't have any meaning. They know, and so the treatment will still go on. The treatment will kind of happen. But when it's
right,
an actual diagnosis, um, it's more of a personal thing where people have that satisfaction. And generally speaking, having that is needed for different things. It could be that it's needed for insurance purposes, or or if it's really really bad, they want to kind of have that to make sure that you know what, it is not this thing, but it is this other thing, right? Just to kind of get that clear, because there are a lot of
right,
similarities too, right?
right, right.
Mhm.
Um, and we I want to talk a little bit about, there is so many different kind of depression, and so we could talk a little bit about some of the some of the different kind that you feel that's important, that will be beneficial to our viewers. What are some of the reason, the different diagnoses, like you have maternal, postpartum depression? What's your take on them? What's the
So
different kind?
yeah, so I mean, it is a good question, first of all. And so I mean, for different people, depression will look different. So you can be diagnosed with a particular depression, and somebody else can diagnose with the same thing, but the symptoms wouldn't necessarily be the same, right?
Right.
And I think that's one of the things we have to be kind of mindful of. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is that there's no one size that fits all. But before we even get to that depression piece, keep in mind that nobody's gonna wake up one day and all of a sudden, like, for example, like nobody's gonna be perfect today, and all of a sudden they wake up tomorrow and they have depression. It doesn't work. Like, that's not the thing, really, right? So it builds up. So a lot of the times, women, for example, if they, when they give birth and so forth, as you will kind of know as well, depending on their experience, and so forth. They can be triggered in different ways, and so forth. But one of the biggest thing now, even though it might not seem to have any sort of medical relation in a sense, one of the biggest things that causing depression these days is finance, believe it or not.
Yeah.
According to study, right? Because things have changed in a big way, and then sometimes we don't even think about it. But at the end of the day, right? Like people have to pay the bills, and they have to pay the rent, and they have to do all of these types of things. They have kids and have obligation, and there's a reason why people live on the street. Like, I mean, here we live in one of the most modernized countries in the world, and like there are people living on the streets, and that's because they have no other choice. And when you start to dig into it, you realize, look, they've lost their job. Houses, for example, and it has a relationship here. So that's one reason I'm talking about it. Like, for example, houses, that used to sell for, $200,000 and less, they're like $1 million now, and so forth. Think about all of
Right.
that,
Right.
right? One, and to be more specific, believe it or not, here where I live, every month, on average, one international student take their own lives.
Wow.
Right, and that's, I live next door here. So and
Mhm.
the reason behind it, for example, international student come, um come from a different culture. Parents have this different expectation, wanting them to study, let's say, engineering. This is just an example. They come here, they realize, that this is not for me. um, it's the country is not what it looks like from the outside, all of those kinds of thing, right? One situation very recently, one person took their own life because they end up renting a vehicle, and because they don't have their papers, the insurance was, I don't know, a few $1,000s more, and all of these types of thing, right? So it is a lot more. So it's not necessary when somebody passed away, or it's not necessarily when somebody give birth and so forth, as I kind of say to you. And like I said, it's gonna look differently for different people. That's for sure.
And what advice do you have for young mothers? Actually, in Guyana, right? You have the whole family there. You got your mother-in-law, your father-in-law, you got your in-laws, them there to help you when you give birth. In this country, you find that you give birth and you have to go home with the baby alone. What are some of the advice that you have for family who have family that they have a daughter or a daughter-in-law that give birth? What should they really do, especially for new mothers?
Absolutely. Very different. And so we were talking about this very recently. For a purpose. And believe it or not, Ken, we are expecting a child in next month for a
For
few weeks.
you?
Yes.
Wow,
Yes, yeah. So
congrats.
we kind of kept it quiet. Nobody knows of this. I guess people don't
Oh,
know.
wow.
But and so we were kind of talking about this same thing, that when a woman give birth to a child, especially in places like Guyana, there will be everybody there gathering, to
Right,
offer
right.
help, neighbors, and all of that. Here is very different, and I know the states is different in Canada. Here in Canada, they have a little bit of an okay system where you can stay home. The mother can stay home for 18 months and stuff like that with pay and so forth. So it's not too bad that way. And but I mean, so ideally, if people can, but in this country, the reality is that everybody has their own obligation,
Right,
right?
right.
And so it is extremely, and so it's not a matter of people not wanting to help, right? People are just scrambling. Some people, depending on people's situation. I mean, like, I've been in this country for a long time. I've been in this country for 30 years, so we have kind of
Oh, wow.
settled in our own way, right, and so forth. But I mean, ideally, if people are able to lend a hand and so forth, things are worth it. We have made, I mean, a decision that works for us to make sure that we're going to have that kind of support and so forth, and that's
Right, right.
we had to make tough decision and kind of let go of certain pieces and not worrying about extra dollars and things of that sort, because we were kind of looking at the big picture, because we had to plan, because we knew obviously that there's not going to be the neighbor coming to kind of help out and assist. And even
Right,
though
right.
I have two loving parents and things of that sort, I we have to be mindful and respectful that they are in their older age right now, and we have to be very respectful and mindful that now is not the time for us to kind of kind of say, here you go, kind of thing. So we are very conscious of things of that sort. But
Right, right.
ideally, in any case, I mean, honestly, personally, for me, apart from the question you asked me in terms of lending a hand to mothers that have kids and so forth, I make it a habit to give back to the society on an ongoing basis, right? I think it is important when we are able to do that, do it. Find ways, creative ways to kind of do it. Like, don't necessarily wait for that invitation for lend a hand and so forth. So I make it a habit. It is part of what I do. It fits with my values, things of that sort, right? Ideally, a lot of people will be mothers, especially, or people in general. Like, people obviously will need help, but they would necessarily want to ask for the help. Asking for help can be extremely difficult, right? People are
Right, right,
ashamed,
right.
or
Right.
maybe they might not be in the best relationship, or maybe they have not had the opportunity to communicate or maintain a good relationship with people. So if you have not had a good communication, or talk to somebody in a while, and all of a sudden you're reaching out to them for help, the conversation might not go so well, things of that nature, right? And
Right,
stuff
right.
like that kind. But I mean, honestly, if people are able to hop in any kind of situation, I will encourage people to do it, because trust me on this one, all of us would need some kind of help along their way, regardless of what that may look like.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you that, this is the right, especially if there is some predisposing factor, which we'll talk about next, that you surround the individual, the mom, and try your very best to see how you can support, cook some dinner, take it over, help sweep the house a little bit, help take her to the doctor, not burden the husband. Because, people don't know sometimes, and you may know that it could be a little burdensome too for the husband, for the father, because remember, his wife just gave birth. He have to do all the running around. So sometimes these things can be very tough on the young family, especially. So always I encourage people to just help out whenever you can. Also, let's talk a little bit about some of the predisposing factor when it comes to depression.
So I
What?
mean, yeah. So generally speaking, and I may have touched on this in different ways. So,
Right, right.
so generally speaking, if people have, let's say, like low self-esteem, that can be a contributing factor. Any sort of traumatic kind of experience, whether that be abuse, right? It could be physical abuse, it could be sexual abuse, all of these kinds of things. It all can lead to some sort of depression, and particularly when it comes to this whole low self-esteem, because keep in mind, when your self-esteem is low, you don't see value in you. You're not able to recognize your own strength. You know what I mean? You're just kind of you know it's hard to even get by that way, right? And so those are pieces. That's my response to that there. And something, if people are watching, or to those who are watching or maybe watching at some point, if you realize that, you know what, you're one of those where your self-esteem is not that strong, something to pay keen attention to. There are ways for you to kind of bring that up, and people could be very intelligent. In fact, what one of the person I was referring to earlier, she's in the hospital right now as we speak. Very intelligent woman, has a really good career, so forth. But her self-esteem is extremely low, right? But I mean, when I look back at her individual case, she got separated. She lived in abusive relationship, and all of these types of things, right? And so something to keep in mind.
Um, I'm glad you say that. Also, while I was preparing for the show, and I know in the past that why women are, I can't put my foot down in my mouth because somebody will beat me up, but women are twice as likely to be depressed than men. Is it because they're weak? Is it a genetic? What's going on?
So keep in
Is it
mind, yeah, no, good question, and I hear what you're saying. Study says that, and keep in mind, we cannot ignore the fact that women do a lot, right? And so a lot of women, when you think about it, it still happens where women will go to work. I know many people, like, women will go to work, just like their husband, and do their thing, come back. But when they come back, they still have to be that housewife where they're still doing the cooking, they're still taking care of, the household, the finances. You're still taking care of, everybody else, all the kids in the household, but also um, the extended family piece too, right? In-laws, or maybe not in-laws, but the mother and father and things of that sort. So women do a lot, and women they're very strong. They're strong people, and I think one of the reasons why this study probably showed this way too. Keep in mind, us as men, we have a good way to hide. Not that women don't, but we have a good way to kind of maybe hide our feelings as well too, right? So we do not necessarily express, ourselves, or we kind of pretend that everything is okay, where in reality it is not. I've had men came and break down, professional men. I'm talking about vice principal, right? People who are nicely dressed, and came and just break down because they've never had the opportunity to really filter things through, right? Because they've kind of just they just try to be that perfect individual, right?
also I noticed that people who are transgender, gay people, they sometimes are very depressed too, right? If you want to touch a little bit about that, not a lot, but
Yes,
what's your take?
because yeah, for sure. Because I mean, they keep in mind, like different people have different values and things of that sort, and study shows, that people in that demographic, they really go through a tough time, right? Tough time. And I remember And as a social worker, I have to represent all demographic, whether that be women, children, and I have to separate my values from my professional values. And I remember, um, um, I wrote an article and acknowledge that particular group, because I felt as if as as a social worker, I just cannot exclude anybody and any group. And just by me adding a piece of a piece of a acknowledgement in that article there, there was a lot of negative things, and people were just all over it, and a lot of bullying was happening, and it came to a point that I realized at the end of the day that I cannot, I'm not responsible for people's behavior and their mentality and so forth. I end up pulling out that article, because of people not understanding. So my question, my response to you, yes, it when you are in a minority group, especially as such, you do get a short end of the stick. That's the bottom line.
Right, right, right.
Yeah,
Also, people who are like poor and who live in the ghettos and so on, they
absolutely.
have a chance of getting depressed too.
Abs-
Wondering where they get the next
Absolutely.
meal from.
Absolutely. You will be amazed to know that. I mean, I may have mentioned, in previous times that I was never interested to work in mental health. This has never been my thing. We don't talk about mental health, stuff of that kind. But I have to say that I've kind of embraced what came my way. But I have to tell you, like a lot of the like educated folks, that like I'm talking about people who have their degrees, and not saying that people who don't have a degree are not smart people, but I'm trying to make a point here. You'll be amazed to know how much they break down and cry and really kind of share how depressed they are, right? But if I was to be in a, let's say, in a an entertainment setting, where we're doing a show or something, and like you wouldn't think of these things. But when you are in a therapeutic setting, because keep in mind, as you would know, you're in that line of work, right? We have that
Right.
skill, really, right, to kind of really set that tone, right, for a safe space and so forth, and so we have the technique, right, and so people are just being vulnerable when they come to a space as such.
Right. And that's why I always tell people, be careful what you do to people or how you treat people because you don't know what they're going through, especially at a job or your friends, whatever it is. And
Absolutely. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
No, you are so right. It is so true. And I think the more we educate ourselves, the better it is. Because, for example, right, sometimes we might not hear from, let's say, a friend of ours in a long time. And we as human beings, we have the tendency to say, you know what, look, they don't call us anymore. Like they used to call us every week. We don't hear anything, right? But the
Right, right, right.
reality is when people are going through challenging time, difficult time, their motivation is not there to pick up that phone and call. And I think all of those are warning sign that something is going on. So for example, a friend of mine, young folk, young individual, I mean, and I only found out when the situation happened, his wife passed away like less than 2 weeks ago, um through cancer thing and so forth. And I mean, me understanding all of those pieces, I get to realize and recognize why things go a certain way, right? So we have to be mindful um of these things, because as human beings, we, and myself included too, like we are very judgmental, right? We have that expectation of people, not realizing that I always believe that change start with us. So if I'm not hearing from Ken, then I have a responsibility, I have an obligation to kind of check in with Ken, that like, how are you doing, things of that, right, and vice versa.
Right, right. Um, and you said right. And a good thing to do too is that when you're not hearing from a friend, the good thing to do is to call them and see how they're doing.
Absolutely.
Some too many times we said, listen, Tom Jones is not calling me. Listen, I have no time with Tom Jones either.
Mhm.
You know, and for someone and their family, what are some of the signs and the symptoms? I know you
Mhm.
mentioned
Mhm.
some earlier, but what are some of the signs and symptoms we are looking for when
Yeah,
someone is going through that depressive state?
absolutely. So I mean, like, we know best of the people who are in our circle, right? We know everything about them in terms of how, how they do things and all of that. And so if we recognize that there's a change in them in terms of how they respond, let's say they used to be one of the big fish in a small pond, is what I like to say, meaning that, the center of attention individual and so
Right,
forth.
right.
I'm usually a big fish in a small
That's all
pond.
right.
Right. um, but and if we realize that, oh my goodness, Narayan is not that big fish in that pond anymore, kind of thing, right? And a one-time thing, not a big deal. Maybe he's having a bad day, but if we realize that behavior is kind of continuing, we have to pay keen attention. And that's one of the reasons I said to my wife recently, because I did recognize a few things in little circles, and I
Right,
said
right.
to my wife that I will have to give this person a visit. And my wife said, "Why?" I said, that I can see some withdrawn there.
Yes.
Right, and for me it's important. I cannot know if I don't know, and if I don't have that knowledge, and if I missed it in some way, then that is okay. But I think being, if people recognize that somebody withdrawn, let's not come to any sort of conclusion and say, oh my goodness, that they've changed. Sometimes we say things like that, oh my goodness, they changed now. So, something things like, oh, okay, since they get married to that person, that girl changed them, things of that sort. Or since they
Right, right, right.
move, or since they buy that house, things like that. They change, not necessarily. People do go through a lot of things, and I can tell you, everybody will go through different things at different times. And you can have the world of money. I'm not saying that money is not important. We all strive to have more, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as we have that balance. You can have the world of money and all the material things, but yet being unhappy, something doesn't sit right with you. And once we recognize that, I think it's important to kind of, if you know the person well, have a conversation. That's what I would do, and kind of just ask, bluntly, based on your relationship with the person, right? But you cannot ignore it, because I mean, when we talk about Guyana and so forth, I'm still, and I think eventually, I don't want to make any promises here, but I think eventually I would love to do some major studies, to understand why we're having like all of these, suicide thing happening in Ghana, because a lot of them are young people. And I mean, speaking of that, even my own cousins, and like I'm talking about like a year ago, two of them in their 20s, handsome young boys, end up taking their own life like
Wow.
few weeks
Sorry
after,
to hear that.
with each other, right? And so it was kind of hard to understand, certain things, right? And so we have to kind of we cannot be ashamed, or cannot, because a lot of times, I mean, sometimes we have pride too, based on our values. If we have challenges going on, we do not want to reach out to such and such of people, right? Because we're afraid that they're going to judge us and so forth too, right? And it does happen, but I think it's still worth it, because at the end of it all, you have to look at the big picture.
Right, right. Also, people would have, we're talking about signs and symptoms. We know sometimes people sleep too much or they don't sleep at all, having low energy and the fatigue. Also, they have difficulty concentrating. They will go to work and they can't concentrate, or while they're home, they cannot concentrate. They may have headache. Also, we know that they may not eat or they may eat too much, right? Um, Having said that, Narayan, when should one seek help or encourage their family members to go and seek help?
Yes, so I think it's so first of all, if they recognize, and you, thank you so much, by the way, for spitting out those lists. That's an awesome, and you've nailed it there. That's awesome. You've done
Yeah,
your you've done your
we
homework
are a
there. So
team. We are a team.
yes, so absolutely, you've kind of said it there, and so perfectly. And so I mean, if we recognize that there's a change in that person, including some of what you have said there, I think it's important based on your relationship with the person, because you do not want to say it in a way to the person so that they kind of feel, well, they're stupid, you know what I mean, or whatever. I think it's nice to really educate. For me personally, I will educate myself more on that, kind of thing, just to make sure that my approach is fine. Um, but kind of start a conversation soft, right? Asking the person if everything is okay, right? And so forth, and letting them know that, hey, you know what, it is okay not to be okay, things like that kind, and maybe take that opportunity to share some of your own personal stories and say, look, you know what, last year I did not had a good year, I had a rough year. I was not able to sleep. I was not able to, still to stay focused, at at work and so forth. But guess what? I was able to get out of it and so forth, right? You
Good.
kind of um, engage them in that kind of a way, right? And once they start to respond, or in most cases, people will break down, they will cry, right? And because they kind of they're triggered by everything that they're hearing, and now they feel as if, you know what, finally somebody, recognize that they're not themselves and they're here to help me. And usually comes with a cry, because nobody's gonna in an excited way kind of share, yes, I can focus, or I cannot fall asleep and so forth. But that's gonna be a good thing to do. Like, we really have to start to act. I know we've had lots of conversation, and things of that sort. So the thing is, what do we do now? We have to start to be that person to make those change happen.
Good. When we come back, I'm going to play a song now. I'm going to give some shout outs. We have to give the love to our viewers. So think about what I'm going to ask you now. How do we treat depression? So let's say hello to Amaral Madramutu. Good evening, my dear. Henry Villa watching all the way from Texas. Have a great show. Balika, this sweet singing Balika, good evening to you. The beautiful Miss Pamela, pretty Pam, let life itself is a struggle, absolutely, and a big journey, and have to be strong headed and go out and take a walk, a different simple walk. And we'll talk about all of this later on, of some of the things to what you could do. Anita Ish is watching. Sharda Sarju is watching. Bibi Ahmad watching from Guyana. We have Sharda Sarju again. Good evening. Harry George is watching. And I know I had Harry George on. Rowena Lal, I was depressed for 3 years. There's a lot of things that can trigger depression. And we'll talk a little bit about that too later on. I'm so IB sometime that happens to you when you were young. Who else we have? Rowena Lal, good evening, my dear. So sorry for your loss. Depression leads to suicide if it's not treated. I like that. We have some bright people watching the show today. And it is so true. And we will talk about that too. Um, who we have else? Rowena Lal. Nashima Rahman, a very good evening to you. Thank you very much. Um, let's see, we have Harry George again, Rowena Lal, Lisa Chin is watching. Let me see, Lisa wrote a long comment. I just finished using the herbal medicine which I ordered from the doctor. And finally, I've been totally cured from HSV2 and high blood pressure after 3 years of experience. Thank you so much, Doc, for all you've done. Um, Also, we have Sabitri Ramsamoj. Good evening to you. Geeta Rampersad is watching. Rihanna, let me see if I could pronounce that name. I think that's a French name. Lanscote Shalini Rajkumar is watching. Thank you very much. Indrani Suka, good evening to you. Zalil Bakas was watching. Camille Rivera, good evening to you. And she says, happy Sunday to all. So Udra saying a very good afternoon to you. Um, Usha Ishri Prasad watching. Thank you very much. Let me play a nice song for all of you to listen now.
Please listen carefully. The vocalist is in. It's a flag from the island. The Indian anthem is in. The dancing begins. Nazare apni maatiya rutaan taake sone sitare apni roshni rutaan taake sone bade sham machal ना जानू तुम कब सुहानी रात ढलती ना जानू तुम कब सुहानी रात ढलती
glad to have the man Davy Ramdas Daniel watching.
तुम्हारे इंतजार में तुम्हारे इंतजार खुदा का रंग आ चला है मौसमी बहार में खुदा का रंग आ चला है मौसमी बहार में मौसमी बहार जहाँ की रुख बदल चुकी ना जाने तो हमारी अखियों की रात ढल चुकी ना जाने तो हमारी अखियों की रात ढल चुकी ना जाने तो
Welcome back to the Ken Rampersaud Show today, and we are talking to Dr. Narine. He's based out of Kitchener, right, in Canada, and I'm so glad to have him on. Um, he has been doing a lot of work there in Canada, so I'm so glad to have you on again. Narine Dat, as I said. And I want to read what Davy Daniel said. Reactive depression, you can see the sign. Endogenous depression is a different ballgame. And I want to tell you that so many people that I know is suffering in silence. I'm trying to get your picture off the screen, but for some reason it's not going anywhere. But in the meantime, we could still talk. So my next question to you: how do we really treat depression?
Yeah. And so that's a good question. Hopefully, you can get the thing off there, but we can
Yeah,
still carry
we can
on
still
as you
talk.
mentioned.
Yes,
We can do it. That's awesome. Yeah. So obviously, there are a few different ways, and generally speaking, you can go to your doctor once let's say somebody's diagnosed with depression. They will be given that choice, right? They will be given that choice to go on medication, um, and some people will give that a shot, right? Some people, they do not like the medication deal, and they will go for the therapy treatment, so to speak, things like what I do, so to speak. and
right,
so and so ideally, and so in some cases people do both, because the long-term goal will be to really remove yourself, from those medication and not really depend on that, right? And so generally speaking, honestly, if people can find a creative way to get out of bed. Let me start off that way, because you cannot lay in bed and thinking that the depression is going to be gone, right? So ideally, when I'm working with somebody, right, we put together a treatment plan based on their personal goal and based on what's happening, based on how severe that depression is and so forth. But one of the steps will be, look, you really have to get out of bed, and sometimes these things will be very uncomfortable, right? Because you really have to step out of your comfort zone to make things happen. And you really, when you are depressed and you have lots going on and you feel as if you cannot move on and the whole world is against you, right? It's about taking it one step at a time, little bit at a time. And it could be, and that's something I have to be mindful of, because I have lots of motivation, by the way, right? I wake up 5 o'clock every morning, so I
oh,
have
brilliant,
lots of motivation, and I do a lot of things because of my strong motivation. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but I've been that way. And so I have to be mindful of that, because for some people, we have to work with them to make sure they're making a little step. So let's say somebody has been sleeping, every day for a long time and can't get out of bed. The very first goal really will be, how do we get them out of bed, really, right? How do we
right,
get them to do small little tasks? And those small little tasks might seem to be like, oh my goodness, that's not a big deal, right? I do this every day, right? But
right,
when they're depressed now, it could their thing. doing their own loan laundry, right? Doing those basic stuff, doing the dishes and so forth might be such of a big thing. They have to learn all over again. So little step at a time. And really, the key point really is to have a routine, right? You cannot,
Right.
and that's one of the reasons you will see in motivational video. Apart from, I always say to people, you really have to live for a purpose. You cannot live and not knowing what you're going to do for the rest of the day. You have to live for a purpose, really, right? And so I really, when people are depressed, you have to have a good routine. So your routine could be when you wake up in the morning, you're going to do some exercise. This is just an example. You know what I mean? You're going to, prepare some healthy, food, all of these types of things. But you have to have a daily routine. And at
Right.
the end of the day, people really have to be good to themselves. And that will be different for different people. So good to yourself could be that you're really focusing on you. You're putting you first. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, you cannot feed off an empty bucket. And it's okay to say no to certain things sometimes, because let's say you are one of those where you always do things for people and all of that, and it comes to a point that you are trapped in the depression mode for whatever the reason is. You're not going to be able to do all the things that you used to do, right? So
Right.
it
Right.
have to come to a point that you will have to say no to these things. And obviously, if it comes to a point that you find that you're not making any sort of progress and so forth, right? You can seek, as I mentioned, earlier, that specific treatment where you need that medical piece, right? So whether that
Right.
be any kind of dosage of to at least bring it down a little bit, but it is treatable. The thing is if you are aware of things,
Right.
and you're working towards that thing, then you are going to see result. Things will be different. And even though you get depressed or some sort of sadness because of a particular thing, that thing probably will never go away, but at least you will learn strategies how to deal with it, how to manage it. And I mean, for example, one of the popular pieces, at least we use here, I'm pretty much sure they use it in the states as well too, right? The cognitive behavior therapy study shows that it works really, really well, which is the CBT. And so basically, what it is in a short form, it's not going to take away everything, right? But it's like a shield. Once you learn the technique, it kind, you can use it as a shield to kind of protect yourself from getting hurt, kind of thing. So a lot of things people can do, but again, it starts off. It's not a magic. It starts off with seeing a professional, a professional therapist, for example, and you really have to be part of that process, right? Part of the process in the sense that you have to want to get better. You cannot, go for treatment one or two times and thinking, oh my goodness, it's not working. There are steps to things, right? Yeah,
Right. But let me ask you something. I'm having a lot of problem with this page. It's
that's okay.
but
That's okay.
they're hearing us, so which is
I
a
can
good
see
thing.
you though. I can still see you, half of you and half of myself. So we're not doing
Oh,
too bad.
yeah, you are seeing us, but they can't see us
Okay,
like
okay.
that. They're just seeing you, which is good. I don't mind. But let me talk to you. Can they receive both talk therapy and medication at the same
100%. Oh
time?
yes, absolutely. 100%. And so ideally, on all the doctors will recommend that like instantly. And so, for example, one of the offices I work at, we are just located right there, meaning where there are all other professionals there. And the number one thing is that even though a doctor may prescribe something for them to get started, just to kind of, make things a little bit easier for them, or at least give it a shot, because it might not work right away for some people. It takes a while to kick in. I'm referring to medication here. But
Right,
automatically, in every cases, they doctor will refer them to see a therapist, because they know it's very effective. And in a lot of cases too, the doctor will refer them to a therapist and say, you can also think about it in terms of using medication. Use this as think of this well. And the reasons for that is because no doctors want patients to depend on that, because if you're just let's say they feel a little bit depressed, or there's some anxiety going on there, and people have to take that, let's say, that medication right away, right? And
right,
and they're using as a comfort, then basically the situation can get worse too, in a sense that
right,
you kind of rely on it. And let's say you're out of the country, or let's say there's a strike, or who knows what, and you don't have that. So if you're able to manage it on your own, which is very doable, but it takes some time of practice. It's just like driving. When we first learned to drive, I'm not sure what you can, but when I first learned to drive, I'll be shaking, I'll be touching, the yellow line and the white line and so forth. But as we keep doing it, we keep driving second nature without even realizing it, right? So the same idea, when you learn of all of these strategies, you have to put them into practice, and the more you do it, the more you make it a conscious thing, it becomes easy and very fruitful. Study shows that, and based on what I'm hearing from client too, it works. I've had clients where they were broken to pieces, and without medication have gotten in a better place without any question.
Wow. Um, so, do you think you have to take medication forever, or you could you doctor could stop that in a short time or 6 month period?
So good question. And so and the goal is not forever, I can tell you that for sure. And so that's one of the reasons why the doctor will kind of, they'll have a process to it and say, let's try this, let's try the therapy and first and so forth. And then maybe start them with a light dose,
Right.
and there will be a lot of consultation back and forth. Right, they will have to reassess as well to say, is there any improvement at all, and is it the actual medication that really make that improvement? Because it might not be that too, it could be just right. But I really not forever. And what people will do when they start to feel okay, let's say they're using a full tablet, I'm just saying something. Ideally, they will try to cut down, to three-quarter and then half, and continue with that therapy to see if they can still function and be okay without that medication. So, I really, the long-term goal is that. And somebody mentioned about exercise. One thing I can say, exercise fixes a lot of things, and we didn't talk about that. But exercise, any kind of exercise people can do, take my word for it. And study shows exactly what Dave said there. Anything people can do, walking, it doesn't you do not have to go to a gym. I actually, as I'm looking out here, Ken, through the
Yeah.
window, I have a gym, like a huge gym in front of me there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a fence separate my house and a gym, but you do not have to go to a gym to do any sort of exercise. But exercise is a key thing. You'll be amazed to know how well it works. And in fact, I should have mentioned that part of my treatment plan, working with a client, exercise is always part of it, so they can decide as to what sort of exercise they want and so forth. But exercise is such of a beautiful thing, and that's one of the reasons I make it a habit to go for walks and do all little things. And at my workplace, um I like we have desk, and you can bring it up and down and adjust and so forth. And I stand and I work, like
Oh,
and
really?
so forth. And yes, and then like, and it's strange for a lot of people that you have a beautiful office and a chair and you're standing and work. But what study shows, actually, speaking of exercise, study shows that sitting is like
Yes.
smoking.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I stand, and because I realize at the end of the day we are all responsible for our own health. There's no question about that. And so when I go, to, I mean, I work from home as well too, but generally speaking, I will stand and I kind of make it a habit, and that's me, right? But you have to be disciplined. But exercise works as well too, um, with anything. And so if you're not depressed in any way, with that is awesome. If life is going well for you, that is excellent. But if you can incorporate any sort of exercise in your life, starting as of today, do it.
Absolutely. That's a good thing. And, let's talk a little bit family. What role family play if someone is diagnosed with depression?
So before I answer that, let me give a special hello to Mahendra. It's nice to
Yes.
see you watching and joining us here, sir. And I hope that you're enjoying that little one there. So that's awesome. And so honestly, Ken, it affects family in a huge way, more in some cases more than the actual person, right?
Right.
In fact, today I had to meet with two sisters, not because they're depressed. Well, I guess they are a little bit stressed out now, but because of the situation with their mother in a in a depressed stage, so to speak, and she's in the hospital, all of these types of thing. I don't I mean, I have flexibility with what I do, but like a day like today, I don't work per se, right, so to speak. But I always put people before profit, as you would know, right?
That's
So
right.
I
That's right.
I could not ignore those two girls reach out to me for help, especially now this is a long weekend here, so like there's shortage of staff everywhere, stuff of that sort. But I made myself available, and so the family, in terms of the support, obviously you have to have the right side kind of support. So for example, let's say somebody, they're so depressed, and let's say they're starting to use, let's say this is just an example, let's say they're using alcohol to cope with it,
Right.
I'm just saying something, right?
Right.
You have to make sure that that person, now you're not engaging with people, you're not living with people who are using, alcohol and drugs and so forth, because it's not going to do any good to that person. That's the number one thing. And though people have their own challenging life, and so forth, we live in a fast-paced world, right? When people are in that kind of stage, you need that additional support. And so, ideally, if I mean, if people have the knowledge, there are lots of wraparound service available. So people do not have to put their life on hold. Family members, I'm referring to, they do not have to put their life on hold to kind of take care of that individual, but they can maybe know of services that are available where people can come. And sometimes this is about keeping an eye on that individual, because when people are depressed, they probably can make a decision that they're not conscious of, right? And it could be things like even take care of their own lives as well too, right?
Yeah.
So keeping an
Absolutely.
eye on that, and that's one of the reasons that they're keeping an eye on this individual 24/7. And that was part of the plan we put together today. And I gave them, speaking of that, I gave them my cell number and say that I'm here. You reach out to me anytime you get stuck. You reach out to me, because I want to be that support system. So if they get stuck and they feel like they need to ask a question or something, they can do that. Um, but I mean, we have to be mindful as well too that family can only do so much. And as you mentioned earlier, who are family these days too, right? I think
Right.
we have to make sure that our circle is our supportive people, that when
Right.
we
Right.
are in need, whatever that need may be, we can reach out to those folks and we can have that support. But I get what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
That about the family aspect and so forth, but family are affected in so many different ways. Like I was talking to like one of the clients, a student, for example. He said when he came to this country, he was brought here by the parents. They made sure that he was okay and all of that. And then the parents, they left back, to go back to their country. And the
Right. Right.
mother was crying all the way here up till
Oh
when she
wow.
went back home. But the mother never shared that with the son. But years after, the father shared that. You see what I mean? So
Right.
they're grieving in kind of different ways. So it is hard for them to support as well too, because they're probably going through more than the actual person, right?
Yes. Yes. Um, Mahendra, hey, how are you, buddy? Good to see you on. Thank you very much. The beautiful Miss Shanta Ramrup, good evening. She's watching from Canada. And the man himself, Mr. John from Queens, good evening to you. Thanks for tuning in. Roshani Baksh, good evening, my dear. How are you? So let me ask you another question. And I think this would go towards patients who have been diagnosed before when it comes to depression. And we are talking about depression today.
Mhm.
Like I said in the past, I'll be talking about some of the diagnoses that we Guyanese that really suffer in Guyana. And we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, I spoke about like cancer. Um, Now, today we're talking about depression. And so during the in coming weeks, we'll be talking about a lot of things that's affecting our Guyanese people. What are some of the things could trigger someone to head back into depression?
Yes. So I mean, well, obviously, some people are lucky that they kind of get out of it. But keep in mind, if for some reason their lifestyle change, um, and it could be the simple as thing as people were in that good state where everything was going fine, and then all of a sudden, you know what, they're in, it could be, they're experiencing the same thing. So it could be, let's say somebody was, somebody got into that depression because of, let's say, I don't know, like a death in the family and so forth, right? But let's
Right,
say they, yeah,
absolutely.
they were able to work things through, and things get better. But ideally, and the reality is, if the when that same situation happen again, that will trigger things again, and it happens all the time. Even when I'm in therapy session with people, and when we have certain conversation, let's say they come because they were abused as a child, for example. As we talk about different things, and when those kinds of topic comes up, it really triggers them, right? And keep in mind, even things like the job thing that we talk about, uh, jobs and stuff is not guaranteed now. So you might work at one place for 5 years, things might go well. All of a sudden, you kind of are in that same boat again. And it can be harder. It can be harder because you start to think about the challenges that you've had, the difficulties that you've had, all of these types of things, and it can make things extremely tough. There's no question about that.
Another important thing, and I'm saying this because I'm a nurse and I hear these
Yeah,
kind of
yeah, yeah, yeah.
stories.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times people start taking medication, let's say for a week and two, right?
Hmm.
And then guess what? They start to feel better and they stop taking their medication. So, what I want to do as a nurse, as a healthcare provider, I want to encourage people, just despite you're feeling better, I want you to take your medication as ordered by your doctor every day and consistently. Now, if you want to stop taking medication, what you need to do is to discuss this with your doctor and let him know how you're feeling and let him do so safely. Don't feel like a lot of us feel like we're doctors and nurses and whatever it is, and we're going to stop taking the medication as the doctor ordered. No, you're feeling better because you're taking the medication. So continue to take your medication as ordered. I want to say that. I also want to encourage family members that, if you have someone that's in a depression state, was diagnosed and they order medication, you could help your family member to take their medication. Just remind them, you know what, take your medication, go take your medication, so that they'll be compliant with their medication regimen. And this is a very important um, piece I am going to talk about. And Narayan, I want to listen to what I'm going to say very carefully because I would want to get your input. And if Daniel is watching from England, he can probably give um, his take on it too. Poverty in rural areas and alcohol abuse are major risk for factor for poor mental health. Alcohol abuse as possible factor that increase the risk of depression, especially in Guyana. So we know alcohol play a big part in there. Also, in the rural communities, I hear people say there is nothing to do but drink alcohol. That's another problem there. There is a lack of trained healthcare professional to help people. Another thing we're going to talk about later, the stigma surrounding mental health stops making struggling citizens to seek help. And according to an NPR article, in 85% of patients seeking treatment end up spending more than 5 years in psychiatric facilities with no legal protection outlining their rights to leave or refusing treatment, right? People are scared that if they go seek help, they'll be sent away with no way to protest. The police, and I'm not sure who takes care of the calls in Guyana for suicide prevention, so I will not talk a lot about that. East Indians have the highest suicide rate among ethnic groups in Guyana. That's according to the National Suicide Prevention Plan. And they said East Indian made up 80% of Guyana's suicide um, between 2010 and 2013. And I have to ask you, in your opinion, talk to me about some of the barriers that you have seen or
Oh,
that
for
you know.
sure. I mean, I actually, you've nailed it there, and thank you for doing, some additional work there. In rural areas, I mean, at the end of the day, the underprivileged folks will be affected more when it comes to mental health and so forth, right? And when you really pay keen attention, even like places like Guyana, like certain places, you wouldn't have the kind of service like a mainstream city, kind of thing, so to speak, right? And so it does affect things a whole lot more, right? And if prior to me migrate to Canada, and I'm talking about over 30 years actually.
Right, right,
um, I came here when I was a child, a young person, and so there was one individual who brought up something extremely important, and it was an African person. Coincidentally, he said that he does not understand why we have so many rum shop being built in these villages and not a consumer place where you can go and get your groceries and all these kind of thing. And I can still remember that thing all of these years, right? And he has a point. And like you will find at places again, and I realize that people have to survive and whatnot, but you'll find that apart from the established or the legal, um, places, like you will find that you can go to like a house, actual somebody's house, really, like the setting setup is that way, and you can actually buy those things. And when I went for vacation, and I'm very connected with Guyana, by the way. I have good connection here. And so, for those of you who are
right,
watching and whatnot, I'm not, we are just having a conversation based on
right,
what we see and based on what Stat is saying. And we're trying to help here, not more than that. But I was very
right,
surprised that at a restaurant, there was like a police officer there. I have a lot of police officer friends, by the way. There was a police
right,
officer in the restaurant, but there was also school child with like not even like a short pants, like a young teenager, like no mouth stats or nothing of that sort. He was drinking a beer in that place, and I saw all of this. So I think, like,
right.
all of those things can kind of lead to to other pieces, and the pieces that we talked about.
Right, right. You know, um, how can you do you think that depression can lead? And I know some of the answers
Mhm.
for these things, but I just
Yeah,
want you to,
yeah,
if
for
you
sure.
have depression and it's untreated, can it lead to depression?
No, I think you want to repeat what you said. I
Wait,
think
wait,
you.
no, sorry.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
you
yeah,
have
yeah,
depression,
yeah.
can it lead to suicide?
Yeah, so I know you know the answer to this, but obviously
Right,
this is
I
for
know.
the
I
sake
want,
of
yeah.
our listeners and viewers here, kind
Right,
of
right,
thing.
right.
And the short answer to that, Ken, is absolutely yes. That's what the study shows, and that's where it becomes troublesome when people are diagnosed with depression, really, and how severe it is matters too, right? But when people are in that mode, they are not making conscious decision, right? And that's one of the
Right,
reason, if you are lucky enough, let's say you call for help and they take you to the hospital, like this one lady I was telling you about, like this is as we speak, she is in the hospital and they're monitoring her 24/7 for that purpose. They're not monitoring
yeah.
her for absolutely nothing more. There's
Wow.
no
Yeah, you see?
weapon in there, there's nothing of that, but they're monitoring her to make sure that doesn't happen, right? And so and like I said to you, I lost a brother by suicide, very intelligent individual. And in fact, when he wrote his suicide note, he wrote that he has wonderful family, he's working with great people, and he thanked my parents for educating him, and he said probably to be too intelligent, and he said that he's sorry, but he's not able to kind of continue on, and we did not know what that mean. But at the end of it all, is that it comes down to that depression thing, right? So absolutely yes, this is a serious thing. And then so the least that we can do is to pay attention to our own behavior, our own feelings, based on what's happening in our circle. Keep an eye out for our spouse, because a lot of times a spouse, trust me on this one, I hear it all the time, as your spouse will not share things with you because they do not want
Right,
to put their burden on you. So keep an eye on that. If you're recognizing that your spouse is behaving differently, keep an eye and be that support person. Don't be like, don't operate the opposite way and say, look, you don't love me anymore. You used to get me those flowers and not
right, right,
anymore.
right.
Don't behave that kind of way. And even with the kids and whoever else. So yes, Ken, it is a sad reality that and by the time we finish here, there are people who will be doing that, all over the place, right? So do know that.
Yeah, I see. Yes, Shanta, I know some of these answers,
Mhm.
but I want, when we are talking, I want to bring out the best answers from our guest, and nobody is better to say that Dr. Narine Dat, who has a lot of experience, and he's out of Canada too. So He's a valued citizen of Canada. So, like I said, he has so much awards for the work that he do, helping the poor, the underserved, and I could name a whole lot. And so, thank you, my brother. My next thing is that can depression pass down like through genetics from mother to her children?
Absolutely, and study again and again. I'm aware that you are probably aware of this. So
Right,
yes, so study shows that it's kind of 50-50. And so what that means is if your family, don't have any sort of traceability of that, that does not mean that you would have it, right? That's one thing to keep in mind. But if the family, somebody in the family has it, there's that 50-50 chance, and it could be the third generation and so forth. And that's one of the reasons when you go to the doctor, like family doctor, pay keen attention to this. They're gonna ask you, do you know of any family member, who has
right,
this and has that? Because it makes their job a little bit easier. They at least have somewhere to start, right? But
right.
absolutely, 50-50. That's what the study is showing. 50-50 chance of that happening.
Um, let's see. Outside of the norm, what can someone do to help them live a life that's stress free, like your mindset and so
Yeah,
on?
yeah,
What?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So you and I wouldn't see it in our lifetime, that's for sure. But I got your point. I got your point. The life comes as, and this is, things that really kind of this is where I shine when it comes to these kinds of things, because I totally get what you're saying. And so in life we are going to face with lots of challenges. There's no question about that. We come to this world lots of challenges, whether that be challenges in the school system, whether that be challenges in our home. And a lot of times we are facing challenges at home and we are not recognize it. For example, I'm going to get to your thing there, but for example, a child might come to their parents and say, "Look, I'm scared to go and write my exam tomorrow. That
Right.
this chemistry exam, and I'm not good at it." And parents might respond and say, "Oh, you'll be fine." That's very troublesome. It's very troublesome because what's happening there is that we're not hearing the child, right? We're not listening to what they're saying, and so forth. And so we are not now creating a space where that individual can come, you can share, how they're feeling, because that's what I'm being told. You're going to be fine. That's hard. But for me, I ideally, honestly, I have a good life, and I'm very pleased about that. And the way it works for me is that I try to enjoy my moment. And so I'm right. And so the best place I can ever be is where I'm at right now. So I do not wait for to plan a vacation to go somewhere, out of the country, somewhere special, before I have that excitement. I embrace every moment. I'm very conscious with my surrounding. I do a lot of grounding, meaning that I appreciate everything in life, right? I appreciate the fact that because honestly, when we go to bed, we're not sure if we are going to wake up the next morning. That is something
Absolutely, brother.
we don't know. And so when I wake up in the morning, and I wake up 5 o'clock because I'm so excited to get out of bed to really
Wow.
maximize
Good
my
for
day.
you.
And I usually say, thank you, to that higher power. And I want to say this to Ken, and I'm hoping that people
Yes.
can relate in some shape or form. One of the reasons why I don't spend much time at the temple anymore is because I grew up at a temple. I was an assistant pandit and so
Pandit.
forth.
I know
I
that. Yeah.
find that I find that in order for me to incorporate and put into practice everything I learned at the mandir, everything that I learned from the Bhagavad Gita and the religious book, in order for me to make it a reality, I have to spend more time out of the temple, right?
Oh,
Because if
wow.
I go to the temple, I'm not getting the opportunity to practice and put into action the things that I learned, right? I feel that I've graduated from that temple a long time ago. And so I view things differently. I'm not stuck at that temple where and I'm not saying that people shouldn't go. I want people to don't misunderstand me and send me an email here. But
Right.
so and I think all of that, honestly, it really my life is not as stressful. And even when the stress come, like, and there are going to be time when we have stressful time, but even when that stressful time comes, I pay keen attention to it because I realize that sometimes good things comes in the form of disguise. So I
Yes.
use it as an opportunity, right? So let's say I'm going to Toronto, right? And I realize, oh my goodness, the traffic is slow. I hate that, by the way. When the traffic is slow and there's like a lot of trucks
Right,
and
right.
so forth. I use it as an opportunity to say, you know what? What other road can I take to get to my destination, right? Or sometimes
Yeah.
I say, right, that you know what, look, the good news is that we're safe here, we're okay, you know what I mean, it could have been worse. And so I think, and that contentment thing that we've talked about in the past, as much as we want nice thing, as much as we want all the material things, it's nice to pause and really acknowledge the things that we already have, right? And all of those things, a lot of things, I mean, my educational background means nothing to nobody else, right? But the fact that I'm a first generation, and the fact that I am one of the most decorated, or if not the most decorated individual in Canadian history, makes me feel good about me. So people have to dig in their own self, and it does not have to be all of these medals and all of these academic pieces. But everybody has a lot of unique things, and they have to recognize it and acknowledge it. And I think once people start to do that, life will be so much more sweet, more enjoyable, and keep competing, but compete with yourself. Because when
Yeah.
you compete with yourself, you will always be a better version of you. If I'm trying to be like you, I will always be unhappy because there is only one Ken, and vice versa.
I'm glad you said that because I was at a function Friday night and it came to my mind and said, we all are blessed differently. Go ahead, find your blessed and share it. Um, I have a question, and Narine That had just answered this question, but I'm going to ask it again. Question for Mr. Narine: does depression runs in family?
So you could have answered that too, but that's fine.
But
So, but thank
okay,
you for bringing that up because that's the whole purpose. So, yes, yes, Pooja lives in Canada here, by the way.
right,
She's a very
yeah,
talented singer.
she's a
Yeah, but
singer, right?
anyway, yes, yeah, yes. So, yes, it runs in a family. What we had mentioned earlier, Carter studies. There's that 50-50% chance, right? So, meaning that if a family member has it, there's a good 50% chance that you're gonna have it. But let's say there's nobody in the family has it, there's still that potential of having it, because keep in mind the world that we live in right now is very toxic, right?
Right.
People are very mean. Like, we see a lot of bullying on social media, bullying in the workplace. We see people fighting for properties and all these types of things, and it adds up, it builds up the stress, and one stress add up to the other one, then it comes to that whole depression thing, right? Yeah, so yeah.
I want to stress too, since she
Hmm.
asked the question, because sometimes people believe because their mother or father has depression, that means they're going to get it. No, it does not mean that you will get it. Chances are that you're going to get it. But I want to encourage people to live the best version of themselves, especially if you have a family member with mental illness. You don't want to live a stressful life. You want to live a comfortable life. And like Narayan says, that you know what, you enjoy yourself. And he said all of this, and I want to use a term with what he's saying, to live in mindfulness, to live in the now, not tomorrow, not yesterday, to live now. Enjoy the breaths that you're going to take now. Enjoy the things that you have now. Don't worry, you're going to win $1 million, and when tomorrow come, you don't win anything, right? So I want to encourage people to live a mindful life, to live a life that's productive. um, Another important thing we got to talk about, and let's talk about a little bit about men and depression. Is there a difference when it comes to men and women depression? Um, do you think that men do seek treatment or they don't? And today I was speaking to someone, a veteran, who said to me that he was diagnosed with depression, PTSD, and anxiety. And I get into a conversation with him. I said, why don't you discuss this with your wife? Don't let her know what you're feeling. And he said to me, boy, the pride in me, I don't want to talk about it. So let's talk a little bit about men and depression. Tell me all that you know.
Yeah. So, so you, first of all, men have depression just like everybody else, and so there's a lot of situation. There's a lot of situation based on studies, but based on what I know too. So, for example, if I'm seeing a woman, the conversation will always come up that the husband also suffers, with depression or anxiety along the line, but they do not want to come. And the reason for that, based on what I'm hearing, is that both people come from two different, household where mental health was a normal conversation, and it was
Wow.
not a stigma. And whereas the husband, for example, and this is just a perfect example, like it is a stigma. And in fact, I have a client that I'm seeing Wednesday where she's coming to for her own mental health, but ideally she would want her husband to come, but she's telling me, because she knows her husband more than I do, of course. She said that knowing her husband, he wouldn't come, you know um but one
Right.
thing I can say too, though, is that once people, and specifically men, once they come for therapy for the first time, they keep coming back, because it is probably not as painful as they visualize it, right? Because it's not a painful experience. It is just the right thing to do, right? Yeah.
Um, we got and I'm going to read what Elaine says, right? And I'm going to throw the ball right into Narine Dat lap. I know he always loved to share his knowledge, and we got to say thank you to Narine for always. He don't tell me no when I ask him to come on the show, and despite sometimes I ask him last moment. And Elaine wrote, can I please ask what can we do to help stop community bullying, sir? Because this does increase depression in an individual. And I gotta tell you, to be very honest, it does. And I see so much bullying going on. And I'm gonna ask Narayan, probably in another next week or the following week, if we can do bullying. We could leave that for a separate show, because we got cyberbullying, we got bullying at school, we got so much bullying going on. And I think probably next 2 3 weeks that would give him some time to get all his information. That would help me too, so I could get to asking the right questions. Because as the host for this show, any subject that I'm going to talk about or get somebody to comment on, I want to be knowledgeable of what we're talking about. In so doing, I get the best answers from our guest. And I know Dr. Narayan that is very versed in all these things. So would we tackle this, sir?
Yes, for sure. Yes. So we can have something separate, but I would love to respond to this,
Go
because
ahead.
the reality is that the world is very toxic. Especially when it comes to like the social media platform and all of these types of thing, right? The Facebook platform, we see it every day, and sometimes I am pinching myself because I just cannot understand and accept that, like, people think that this is normal, and it's a shame, actually. So this is what I will recommend right away. If you have sand and water mixed together, and this is what I learned at the temple, believe it or not. That's the reason I said that I graduated from that temple, right? So if you have sand and water mixed together, and you want to separate the sand from the water, the best thing to do is to let it sit by itself, and then eventually
Right.
the sand will settle, and you will be able to pour out that water and get rid of that toxic mud, right? So what I'm trying to
Right.
say here is that if somebody is trying to attack a part of community, a particular individual, you want to assess the situation. Pause. It's hurtful. It's very hurtful. It's painful inside. We want to have our say, so forth, right? And whatnot. But the thing is, once we store it, right? It's
No
never gonna go
problem.
away. You will always go back and forth and all of these types of
Yes.
thing, right? And it gets very nasty. So that's gonna be one of the simplest solution. But a person like me now, I go above and beyond. So I
Right.
actually, when it comes to if that means that changing a policy in a systemic area, whether that be, for example, let's say it's related to the workplace, I'm one of those that I will go and get it done, even if it means me standing alone, because I get it that it is not always about the quantity, it's about the quality, right? The work that Ken is doing right now, the fact that we're talking about depression, which is not a sexy thing. And if we were talking about, let's say, some other stuff, we probably would have had more people watching and listening. But that's not the point. What Ken is trying to do here now, he's trying to close the gap, right? And that's what is important. And so, best solution, don't add to it, right? And be mindful that whatever we do, whatever we say, how we carry ourselves, we are representing ourselves. So if somebody is being messy to us and we do the same thing, like that's not making it right. Not saying that we should not have our voice, but there are professional ways to do it.
Thank you. We got a man, Mr. Apache Warrior. He said, "Love the life you live and live the life you love." And happy birthday. Not happy birthday, Apache. I know that your wife loves you so much. For Valentine's, she said a very special song for you. Some endless song. Boy, she makes you like cook food. So we have Sabrina Dial that's watching. Thank you very much, Sabrina, for watching. Also, I want to say today I seal the deal. I'm going to have my second annual International Women's Day Award that will be held March the 24th. So I'm going to get busy as of tomorrow morning. I have to choose my candidates, the recipients, them. If you know any woman in this community that really do a lot of work, um, let me know, so we could probably give them a little award, let them know that we appreciate what they're doing. Elaine, and I will work with Narine, and we will do specifically bullying, and we're going to focus on Facebook bullying, and we can probably, since he knows a lot about the music industry and have a lot of experience, we could probably do one with bullying and the music industry. Right, Narine?
Yes, I would
We
love
could
to do
focus
that.
on that too.
Oh yes, that will
I'll
be a
put
good
you.
one. I'm sure people love
I,
it. Yeah,
I will put you right on the spot, but we'll do it together. So
yeah,
if
absolutely. Yeah.
we gonna get lashed together. Um, Elaine, let me know. Thank you. I am in New York, Elaine, and I know that you're in Canada. So hope I could get to see you when I come to Canada soon. Um, my next thing is, and we got 10 minutes. I'm going to do, and I'm going to help you this in terms of stigma, right? Um, there is a lot of, let me put it in this way. People go to the doctor because their physical body has problem. They're diagnosed with hypertension, diabetes, stroke, a lot of things. And stroke could cause depression too. And a lot of things, but they don't take care of their mental health, the psychological health, right? But we're going to talk a little bit first about the stigma, why there is a stigma in mental health, why people are not going for treatment, why only half of the people who have mental illness are going to get help. How can we get men to go and get treatment? Take it away, Narayan.
Yes. So I think the first thing is that we really have to educate ourselves on it. Because a lot of the times, I mean, when you hear about mental health, because I'll be honest with you and open here, there's a reason why I had no desire at first. I avoided, and I'm saying this for a purpose here. Um, because of that stigma thing, right? It was not something that, hey, that we embrace, so to speak, right? And so I think once I started to educate myself on it, I realized, oh my goodness, that everybody, I mean everybody is affected by mental health in some shape or form. So it is not it's not just okay one set of demographic and so forth. So honestly, for me, it start off with that educating ourselves, understanding, what that is and what that means, and so forth. And once we understand it, then the next step will be for us to kind of embrace that, right? Keep in mind, it has a lot to do with our upbringing too. Like here in North America, this, like, I mean, I do a lot of different things, and sometimes people get confused. But one of the things that I do, I also work in an addiction treatment center. I believe I told you this, right?
Right, right,
And
right.
it is so amazing, and I don't use drugs or anything, but it's so amazing to see that the support that people give, they give their heart to help these folks that are addicted, to drugs and alcohol and all of these types of things. Whereas in different culture, like say a place like Guyana, like if somebody with some sort of addiction issue and so forth, like people really pay no attention to them. They're not able to separate the two things, that this is a human being and they suffer from a mental health issue, right? So I think the more we educate ourselves, the better it will be, and we can make progress. They're like treatment center all over the place where I live. I'm sure, is it not the same in the States, in New York?
Yeah, we have a
Yeah.
treatment
Oh
center
yeah,
here
yeah.
too.
That's what I said. There are little stuff like that, kind, right? But like like in Guyana, no. That's one of the reason my advocacy work. For example, I was hoping to get the name change in Berbice there, because I'm from Berbice, and then they what the center they have, they call it like the Berbice Madhouse, and this is like
Right, right,
seriously, right? And so it
right,
might sound like we don't think of it. So when you're growing up, like you don't want to go to that madhouse, like you know what I'm talking about,
right,
right?
right, right,
So
right,
I think the language needs to be changed too. You know what I mean? um I think like treatment center sound a lot better probably
right,
than a
right, right.
madhouse, right? So I think all of that. So I think that maybe might be an opportunity for us to get that change there too, right?
Yeah,
So it wouldn't be as bad, because I knew of people who have gone there, and like people who have gone there, automatically we were young, so we will say, um, we will kind of look at a person differently. So my goodness, that person is going to that place because we are thinking, oh my goodness, that is not for us, right? Yes, so I mean, the number one thing, educate ourselves. But I can assure you, once people educate themselves, they will embrace it so much more. And going for treatment, going for regular checkup, you will be a regular thing. I think it should be, maybe the government should start a thing where the same way they encourage people to do a regular physical checkup every so often,
right.
maybe a mental
Hmm.
health checkup should be
A
um, um,
routine.
a routine. And I think in the
Right.
long run, they can save a lot of money too, because right now they put billions of dollars into mental health because of what's happening. But I think if they do the routine checkup, then there wouldn't be any need for all of that. But I appreciate all of the people who are addicted and so forth, and because if it was for that, I would have not get myself a job. I guess I have to put it that way too, right?
Yes, I want to say special hello to Mr. Nazim Hussein, radio personality in Ghana. I know also he's doing a lot for mental health in Ghana, suicide prevention, and so on. And the beautiful Miss Ariana V, thank you for tuning in. And Roshani said, good topic. And I'm going to run a little bit here, not to run out of the show. In the meantime, I'm going to do this. I want Narine to talk a little bit about self care after I finish. So, steps to cope with the stigma. You want to go and you want to get treatment, as he said. Don't let stigma create self doubt and the shame. Don't feel embarrassed. Go get help. Don't isolate yourself. Don't equate yourself with your mental illness. And join a support group. Join a group with like-minded people who actually have the same thing like you, and they will be able to, you guys will be able to talk what's going on with you in a non-judgmental way. So Narayan, our final discussion, I can't believe me and you, we talked
We
for
do
two
a
hours.
2 hour show,
I
I know,
can't
eh?
believe this. I told you we're going to go for an hour.
Yeah,
Anyway, so in terms of self-care, and I'll help you
for
when
sure.
I get the chance to, but what can someone do who has depression,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
are some
So
things they
yeah,
can do?
yes, I'll
Go ahead.
respond to that. And I'm not Pooja, we're not ignoring you here. Send me a personal message. You live in Canada here. Send me a personal message. Message me, and I will really give you some good tips as to how you can tackle all of those pieces. So not to worry. So ideally, when somebody is depressed, right? Obviously they will need that guidance from a professional person, because when you are in that stage, you don't see meaning in anything. And so even so, and you're not even able to take care of yourself, and that becomes hard and sad to see, right? But it will, and because self-care for some people, like for example one fella, and his self-care, because we do this thing where we do like the weekly reflection, right? And this
Right.
has to do with the self-care and everything else. And so one fella, he one was part of his self-care was finally getting the opportunity to brush his teeth properly. And we
Oh,
don't, right? I'm just telling you, and so we don't think of these things. But keep in mind, when people are depressed, when they have no support from anywhere else, they don't even think of things of that sort of taking care of themselves that way, right? But ideally, if people are able to, um to do the simple things like do their nails and all of those types of things, go like that's going to be a good part of self-care. Even things like exercising, and so
Right.
forth. Some people, like one of my coworkers, she watches movies, like weekend, because she really focused on her job during the week, and give it her best shot, and she will just kind of watch a movie. She watch it together with family members, all of that, whatever works for people. Do it. I mean, I admire some people at work, where like every so often you see their nails that have like different colors. One
I
lady I
like
know,
that.
like she said to me that clearly that my hair is a lot of maintenance here, because like she will have different colors every so often, things of that sort. Whatever works for people, but you have to put yourself first always, and it's not a selfish thing. And I was watching Ken, and people don't, and not everybody get understand the difference, which is okay too. One, I believe some Miss USA thing or some big pageant, anyways, or some Miss Universe things. One participant kind of responded and say that she will put herself first, and people didn't get it.
Right.
People think that she's selfish. Like, why would she want to, like, because they see it as if she doesn't care with people. They're not
Right.
understanding is that they're not understanding that
Right.
people cannot feed off of empty bucket. That she need to put
That's right.
herself first, take care of
Yes.
her her health and everything else before she can help somebody else. Self care is key. If you have a family like I do, like yesterday, for example, we gathered together, and we went for a nice little small family dinner all together, and I enjoyed
Oh,
that moment. You're not going to believe it, right? We have to
right.
make time for things of that kind. We did not travel and go far away and spend like lots of money,
Money.
but we
Right.
were very happy together. We were very content together, and those are the things that I encourage people to kind of start doing. I know we only have a minute here, so go ahead.
That's okay.
you
Al- Also, there's two things I wanted to do: avoid or cut down on alcohol, and don't use illicit drugs. These things can lead to depression, right? And also suicide. Also, I want to encourage people to also find someone who you could trust, that you could talk to. And by the way, you could start with your own self, where people could come and talk to you in a confidential way. And if you don't have anyone to trust, also try your very best to seek medical personnel who you could talk to get help. Here is a counselor, whatever it is. And if at any time you're suicidal, seek, call 911, call the emergency service of your country or wherever you're located. All right. And I got to tell you, we did on time. So, closing remarks for you, Dr. Narine Dat.
so the one message I want to give people here is that if you can get one thing out of this show here, you want to really start do some changes, and let's just start with us. Look at yourself
Beautiful.
and kind of say, what are the few things that I love about myself? What are the few things that I'm very much proud of? You know what I mean? And then what can I do
Absolutely.
today to be a better version of myself? Let's say self-care, whatever that may look like. Simple things, little things. For me, Ken, I like
Right.
to take a nice clean shave, in the
All
morning
right.
time, and wear a nice shirt when I go to work. I feel really
Yeah.
good. My wife said to me, like, why do we wake up 5 o'clock in the morning, right? And so forth. But for me, I love
Self
to
care.
shave, love to wear a nice shirt. I love to feel good when I go to work, and it works for me.
That's right. And and like I share the same sentiments with you. You wake up, you take a shower, you feel good. You're thankful. You're thankful that you're alive, that you have your family intact. Nobody's dead. You know what I'm saying? So
Absolutely.
these are the things. Do what you like to do,
Mhm.
and be kind to your own self. And I want to tell people in my closing remarks that no matter what, if you're depressed, there is help. Seek help. Don't drift away where you're going to end up committing suicide or whatever it is. There is help. Get help. All right. Be kind to each other. And I want to say thank you, everyone. And to Dr. Narine Dat out of Canada, my brother, I say thank you very much for coming on today. We were supposed to do it 2 weeks ago, but it happened the right time. Thank you again for tuning in. My screen is totally a mess. I don't know how I'm going to end the show tonight. And just a thank you both for sharing your thoughts on depression. And like I said, down the lines, we all are going to be depressed sometime or the other. What do we do with it? Seek treatment if you need. Listen to this song while I try to come off the radio. And have a great week, everyone.
All right.
एक तारीख कोई लड़की हंसी